Viridian, the Green Guide, by Clouds, My Head in the Clouds Not Coming Down, read by Oakshadow 5. Chapter 13, Problem Child. Summary. Shota shares his concern with Tsukauchi and Amplifier. Shota couldn't help playing with the marble Viridian had thrown at him earlier as he sat by Tsukauchi's desk after his shift. The kid was smart, making the marbles pull triple duty as a way to call heroes, ammo, and a sort of makeshift signature. Viridian would be a popular and effective hero if he'd just get off the streets and into a hero program, but first he'd have to learn how to take better care of himself, because he really shouldn't be on the streets the night after he was almost killed. The kid must have an insane pain tolerance to be out and fighting so soon. The only indication that Viridian had been injured at all was a moderately slower running speed and a slight stiffness when he twisted, but he hadn't let it hold him back as he fought. Shota didn't know if Viridian had broken his ribs or just bruised them, but the kid shouldn't be so used to working through the pain. He also shouldn't be used to hiding his injuries. Shota wasn't even sure the problem child had been doing it consciously, because the way the kid had been doing it instinctively, like pretending he was fine, was a habit he developed after years of practice. And wasn't that concerning? Viridian's obviously high pain tolerance and tendency to hide his injuries were just the latest entries in a disturbingly long list of concerns that Shota had about the kid. He ran straight into danger when the most intelligent thing to do was run away. And if there was one thing Shota knew, it was that Viridian wasn't stupid. He'd known the kid was smart just from the way he'd memorized everyone's patrol routes, and that intelligence had only been confirmed by the way he targeted any weakness he could in his target's defenses. But then he'd seen the notebook. The kid was probably a genius, and Nezu would be salivating if he'd had a chance to read what Shota had, and yet the kid insisted he wasn't smart. At first, Shota had assumed he was joking, but the more he thought about the conversation they'd had earlier, the more he realized that Viridian honestly believed what he'd said. Shota didn't know if he even wanted to think about what must have happened in Viridian's life to convince the kid that he was an idiot, despite his obvious skills, and that was even more true if he had an analysis quirk. Which brought Shota back to his list of concerns. If the kid thought he was stupid despite his intelligence, what other lies did he believe? Did he somehow think he was worthless? Did he think that his life was worth less than the lives of the people he saved? Shota thought back to the fight with the crab villain. Viridian hadn't thought twice about giving up his weapons so Shota could fight more effectively. And then the first thing he'd done after the fight was ask if Shota was okay, with no regard for his own safety or well-being. It was like Viridian had decided in that moment that it was okay if he died, as long as Shota lived. He stared at the marble again, seeing how the green and blacks were together. It wasn't the kid. "Oh, you got one too!" Shota flinched as Amplifier's overly peppy voice practically yelled behind him, and he almost dropped the marble. As it was, he fumbled it and only just managed to palm it before it rolled onto the floor. He turned to glare at Amplifier, who smiled sheepishly at him. "Sorry." "What do you guys have?" Tsukauchi asked, as he walked up with paperwork and coffee. "Viridian's got a new calling card." Amplifier grinned and dug around in her pockets before triumphantly showing Tsukauchi a green marble identical to the one Shota had almost dropped. "He started throwing these instead of rocks so that we know it's him." Tsukauchi frowned at the marble, then turned to Shota. "And you have one too?" Shota sighed and showed Tsukauchi his marble. Honestly, he wouldn't be surprised if the marbles became a badge of honor among their local heroes. He could see them turning into a sort of membership card for an exclusive club of heroes Viridian trusted, even though Viridian went to heroes based on availability, not trust or competence. Still, he wouldn't put it beyond his colleagues to start collecting them. "It seems he's embracing his popularity then," Tsukauchi said bitterly. if he's putting in the extra effort to have a signature. I don't think that's what he had in mind, Shooter said as he put his marble away. I don't know if you've heard, but Viridian somehow got his hands on a slingshot, and the marbles are his primary ammo. As far as I know, he wasn't actually planning on them being a calling card. He has a slingshot? Amplifier bounced up and down in her seat. Have you seen him use it? Is his aim any good? Shooter nodded. He hasn't mastered it by any means, but he's good enough to get the job done. He led me to a group earlier and kept pelting them with marbles to distract them and make them easier for me to take down, and he didn't hit me once. He'll probably get better with it the longer he trains, but for now, he seems to be more comfortable with close-range combat. He has some dual-wielding pipes that he uses as bludgeoning weapons. Pipes? Tsukachi asked. Aren't they considered an improvised weapon? Why didn't he invest in something better, like tonfa? There are more than enough illegal weapon dealers that he wouldn't have a problem finding something. And yet the problem child chooses to use something that can be bought at literally any hardware store, Shota said. It does make him harder to track. Not that we're going to bother, Amplifier piped up. He's not hurting anyone. He's a vigilante, Tsukachi said sternly. And we need to be prepared to capture him if he ever crosses the line into villainy. You both know how common that is. They were all silent for a moment as they remembered Stendhal and the other vigilantes who had turned. Vigilantes tended to make extremely threatening villains. Viridian's still young, Shooter said finally. There's still time to guide him onto the right path. Yeah, Amplifier agreed. He's just a kid, so go easy on him, Tsuki. Tsukachi sighed heavily. Just keep an eye on him. If he gives any indication that he's going too far, you need to bring him in. If you catch him quickly enough, he might even be a candidate for the Vigilante Rehabilitation Program. That does the old thing? Amplifier asked. I thought it was just an artifact from the time when hero licenses were still getting started. Has anyone even gone through the program in the last few decades? It's not common by any means, Shota said. Because society expects heroes to start legally now, but the laws are still on the books. Since the program hasn't been overturned, law enforcement can still petition the Hero Commission to allow a vigilante to participate, provided that they don't use excessive force in their takedowns. And since vigilantes like Knuckle Duster, who routinely beat villains to a pulp, are more common, Tsukachi said, most modern vigilantes don't qualify. The Hero Commission isn't likely to approve an untrained kid like Viridian for the program anyway, otherwise I'd try to get him approved now. I guess that makes sense, Amplifier pouted. But I would still love to see Viridian as a legit hero. Can you imagine seeing kids with green hoodies and little marbles on keychains or something? What makes you think he'll even want merch? Shooter said. He might want to stay underground. Don't be ridiculous, Amplifier waved away his concerns. He's a happy young teenager. Of course he wants to be famous. Shooter frowned. The kid had only had one article written about him, but even that had seemed to make him uncomfortable. And Shota was also worried that happy wasn't the right word to describe Viridian's mental state. What's wrong, Eraser? Tsukachi asked. Something's nagging at you. It's just... Shota dragged a hand down his face, making him look even more exhausted than he actually was. There's a lot of little things that have been adding up, and I'm not quite sure what to do about it. Maybe we can help, Tsukachi said kindly. What's bothering you? I think Viridian might be depressed, Shota said. What? Amplifier said. He's a teenage boy. Why would he be depressed? From what I've gathered, he doesn't have the best life. Shota started rolling the marble between his fingers again. Last night, he almost died helping me with the fight, but he was out again tonight, fighting like it had never been happened. So he's reckless, Tsukachi said. That's pretty common in teenagers. That doesn't mean he's depressed. Yes, being reckless is normal in teenagers. I'm a teacher, so I know that better than most. But Viridian's recklessness goes beyond what I see in my students, Shota said. It's almost like he believes that his life isn't worth anything, which isn't an attitude someone develops overnight. You think he might be being abused? Tsukachi said in realization. Shota shook his head. Not at home. Viridians never mentioned that, but when I mentioned school once, the kid completely shut down. Bullies, Tsukachi said. Shota nodded. He acts like he's used to hiding injuries and pain, so it's possible he's been trying to hide the bullying from his family. That means he's been treating his injuries himself, doesn't it? Amplifier said. Remember that first time I actually talked to him? A store clerk got severe burns during a robbery, and when I went to go check on the victim, Viridian had already given first aid. When I asked him how he knew how to do that, he just said he'd had a lot of practice. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but do you think... Shota sighed. Unfortunately, yes. He most likely had to practice on himself. I don't think the bullying is entirely physical, though. Psychologically... He trailed off. It was just a hunch, but he hoped he was wrong. He hoped that Viridian was emotionally resilient and had access to the correct resources to deal with the abuse he faced at home. He hoped that the problem child had become a vigilante because he thought they were cool or to annoy the heroes, but... Tsukachi gestured for him to continue and shut aside. He doesn't know his own worth. I got a peek at his notebook tonight and the kid is brilliant, but he seems to genuinely believe that he's stupid. He runs into fights that he isn't prepared for, and he doesn't seem to care about his own safety, despite the fact that he is almost excessively worried about the safety of the victims and even the heroes he's fighting with. The first time I met him, I told him that he shouldn't get into fights because he didn't want to die, and he hesitated. Shota rubbed the bridge of his nose in exhaustion and frustration as Amplifier and Tsukachi stared at him with wide eyes. I think Viridian might be suicidal. Damn! That was chapter 13 of Viridian, the Green Guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And have a good rest of your day, guys. And I'll see you next week, next Wednesday. Bye! Hey, outtakes! Shota rubbed the bridge of his nose in I can't speak the last freaking sentence. Shota rubbed the bridge of his nose in exhaustion. Shota rubbed the bridge of his nose in exhaustion.